Okay, this is one of my favorite subjects to talk about. Removal of directors and board members. These meetings are always juicy. I definitely have to psych myself up for them. Basically what happens, and I hope this never happens to you, but if it does, come and talk with me because I have some excellent strategies on how to get through it, how to survive it, and how to comply with the law. So basically what happens is if you have an owner or owners that are unhappy with how things are going, they have the legal right under the law to do a removal meeting to remove you as a director for the association. Now oftentimes I've thought to myself, gosh, if somebody, I've served on my board, you know, where I live, and I've often thought, you know, if somebody wanted to remove me from office, that may not be a bad thing, right? Get to watch The Good Wife, I get to spend more time with my kids. But really when it happens to you, you feel differently. So know that, because typically when it happens to you, they're spreading a bunch of venom and false information regarding the board. And also you're thinking to yourself, do I want these people running our association? You know, and sometimes these people are a little, you know, loco, you know, and so you have to, you know, make a decision, balance the pros and cons. Most of our clients that they receive a removal petition, most will stick it out to see what happens. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what do these owners do in order to have a removal meeting. Well, first, if your bylaws have a procedure for removal, throw it out the window. It does not apply. Under Arizona law, the law trumps your bylaws. So if your bylaws talk about removal of a director, forget about it. What you need to know is what the law says. And basically the first thing is, if you're an association with 1,000 or fewer members, 25% of the membership must sign a petition calling for your removal. Okay, so typically what you'll get is a removal petition. Somebody will dramatically give it to you at a board meeting is typically what happens. If you have over 1,000 members, it goes to 10% of the votes. One little technical caveat on this, so let's say you have 1,000 or fewer members in your association, it's 25% of the votes or 100 votes in the association, whichever is less. And for the over 1,000 members in the association, it's 10% or 1,000 votes in the association, whichever is less. So you received the petition. What do you do next? First, get the petition right away to your association's attorney. And what's the first thing that we do? Please don't wait a bunch of days, okay? Because we have a 30-day time period to crank this out. And so in my office, I have a number of people in my office here today. When a removal petition comes in, it's crisis mode because we have a lot to do in 2 days after that petition comes in. And so basically you give the petition to your attorney. As the attorney for the association, I check every name on the petition to see if the person who signed it is a record owner. They have to be on the deed, okay? If a husband and wife sign it and they only own one lot, it only counts as one. And so we fan through the petition to look for names to pull out. If somebody is delinquent, we pull the name out. It doesn't count to the percentage that's required. If a renter signs it, it gets pulled out. If a power of attorney signs it, it gets pulled out. And so we really sift through a lot of these. Now I would say of the petitions that we get, I'd say maybe 10% don't, once we get the petition and we count it, they don't have the votes. But 90% they do. And a very common question that I get from the board at this kind of time where the petition's been submitted is we start to hear that, you know, somebody signed it and they didn't know what they were signing, you know, or those type of things. Or the signatures have been forged. That's another thing that I hear a lot. And so what we typically will suggest is if we're starting to hear that, and I cannot think of a removal meeting that we did last year that didn't have that allegation, we send out a letter to everybody on the petition right away saying your name was submitted on this petition, and we attach it. If you did not know what you were signing, or if you, you know, your signature was forged, please contact me immediately via email. And even though we send that letter out, I gotta tell you, maybe a handful of people claim, they actually contact me to say that. So Just know that going in. Some of the requirements are we have to hold a special meeting to vote on the removal of the directors within 30 days. At that special meeting, we need a quorum of 20%, which is lower than what some of you may be used to. And if you have the quorum at that meeting, then the majority of the board a member of the board or the entire board, however many people are up for removal, may be removed with or without cause by a majority of those voting at the meeting. So let's give an example. Let's say that you have a 100-person association. And in order for the 100-person association, let's say you fall under the top category up there, you need 25 people, 25%, to sign the petition in order for the removal meeting to go forward, right? We have to have the removal meeting in 30 days. At that removal meeting, we will need 20% quorum, which will be 20 owners only. That's small, right? And then at that meeting, let's say only 20 owners show up, we only need 11 to vote to move up to oust the board. Now, that's kind of shocking, don't you think? I think so. But I can tell you here, because I go to removal meetings all the time, and this is not a low participation event. This is the social event of the year for your association. I had an association in the Biltmore that went through this. We had 100% participation. And not only that, the meeting was at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and I was operating it out of the trunk of my SUV in the cul-de-sac, and it was like 38 degrees. We still had 100% people. So, know that if you're a board member sitting here, know that a couple things. First, it's really hard to get removed. Okay, why? Because they don't want your job, right? They probably don't want the people that are a little nutty in office, but they also don't want to do it. So what we typically find is boards are typically not removed. If I looked at the percentages on this, I'd say when I go to a removal meeting, and we probably do one a month, maybe a little more, when I go to it, I would say 9 times out of 10, the board is retained. Okay? But there's some strategy during this process and after this process. During this process, your board really needs to get out there and talk about positive things. This is not the time to be negative. This is the time to say, this is what our board stands for. This is what we've accomplished. This is where we see our board going in the future. People like that. People don't like mudslinging, letters that aren't signed, emails, 18 emails from the board before the removal meeting. That's not a good strategy, so I can help you with that. Then after the meeting, we need repair strategy. These things are extremely divisive for your communities. I don't know if any of you in this room have been through one, but they are a nightmare. They're very, very contentious. And we need to get together after the meeting and say, okay, what now? What can we do to bring the community back together? What can we do to bring these people that may have been so disgruntled somehow into the fold, to give them some say or power or something, just so that we can get along and so that our association isn't on channel 3, right? So those are one last thing, most important thing. If you survive the removal as a board member, only 1 removal attempt per term. So you're good for the rest of your term. You don't have to go through it again.